diversification, pressure, pain moments out of it. But it is the point of time now from my viewpoint, and so the Russian economy must diversify under any circumstance. And so I would strongly recommend to take the pain now and to solve this problem, and even to discuss and to push for something like a Mediterranean Sea pipeline in the interest of the direct rivals in gas export market battles. This is a very asymmetric, somehow crazy sounding argument or theory then, but it would help Russia. And so Russia could easily make offers to help, and even if they wouldn't make any gas deal, they could help Egypt to make, because they can calculate then, and by calculating the risk you have planning security, and then you would force your economy to diversify. So you would accept and would calculate with a very low gas price, because you expect that this will happen under any circumstance. And so it sounds somehow stupid, but it is. Planning security is is a value. So you control the losses. The loss control moment is a very economical and country leading important, for the leading of a country, important factor. Planning security is very, very important. And so, and if you have a share in that, well, Russia would simply prove to the world that it's not, and there are so many side reasons, side kick reasons, side effect reasons, which would enable a different kind of logic. And by that, Saudi Arabia and Qatar would not have one major reason less to go to war in Syria. And so Russia needs to really question more, and needs, as RT is always proclaiming it, and is always insisting and commanding it, it needs to question more, and it needs to question itself more. And now you see how important it is and how important it would be. Because the traditional linear logic, or the economical success logic, the geostrategical political logic, from my estimation right now, would say totally nonsense what Diering has said in the last 4, 5, 6 videos, or even before. Maybe people don't understand what I say, but it is, from my viewpoint, the point of time to allow this pain of a changed, diversified economy, and to get away from gas, oil, atomic energy, and from the military industry in its focus. And this is normally only happening if there is a shock moment according to an economy, like the Ukraine thing. But I guess Russia is wasting this shock moment, even according to the Ukraine. And one indicator for that is how the Crimeans are not very happy with the economical development, because it's too slow. It's the heart and the focus of the policy and of the political system and of the media in Russia is, and that's where it's also dangerous for Putin, is shifting to Syria, and it's an inner political problem. So the Crimeans, well, and this is an indicator for a lack of prioritization of economic development in itself. So Russia shouldn't hail Putin as a ISIS battle success person. It needs to take care about the problems if Egypt will be split away, and Russia would not only, as Russia has hailed the Erdogan-Putin deal, now they have lost it. Possibly they lose it. And by a deal, by the way, Erdogan would get gas also from Qatar, and so and if Russia would participate in that, and building it even against its own interest, it would be at least a move which needs to be discussed. It sounds still crazy, but I just need and want to discuss the solution of the Syrian conflict, and also the possibilities of Russia to get more planning security, to accept the self-pain of in the moment that it needs to, and under any circumstances needs to diversify its economy, and so on and so on. And so it really could be and is a solution to the Syrian conflict, at least a moment which could lead to peace if this pipeline war reason is away. Because, and now you see, and maybe it's leading under any circumstance, you see, if you then discuss the other way of thinking, the way how it can be forecasted under most likely circumstances or something like that, you would say, well, the Russians are there in Syria, so the split of the country will possibly not be will possibly never happen, depending on the speed how Assad can guarantee a unified Syria, which is in the end the hindrance moment for this pipeline, and the interest of Syria, Assad maybe, and so on. And the same thing Russia could also negotiate with the Qataris and the Saudis in Syria itself to a peace deal out in direct participation with Assad as something like a split of Syria, a Sunnistan, and so on. And so that's a big temptation mess, if you like, and a massive accumulation of reasons how Russia can be tempted to act only in its economical interests and not to solve a solution to really get peace. And so it can really be something like a temptation for not in all points good deciding, but a respectable and good state leader like Vladimir Putin. And I think he is acting in a smart and in a good way in many fields. And helping Assad to fight terrorism is possible if it is not going over the borders where people are Sunnis and where they really want to have the right and want to have an own state. And so there could be somehow a border of this involvement and of the help of Russia if you really would discuss it how God is seeing the whole situation down there. If I made the argument that God is giving this sword to Vladimir Putin to help Assad to get away with the bandits and the criminal elements and the things, the Islamic State, Turkey, the Americans with the help of the Saudis, and the Saudis with the help of the Americans, and Israel influence fear, creating ISIS to get rid of Assad. If Russia is fighting against it, because it's, as it is said in the Bible, that the authorities, even if they act bad, normally are giving a sword with the right to fight evil in the country. And what ISIS is doing is evil. So there are many ways and many points where Russia really can do something like a deal and can act even self-painful against its own interests and so on. And from my viewpoint, one clear way to get to a solution is also the discussion and the debate of alternative pipeline routes, and even of the discussion of the acceptance of a split Syria then. And if you say, well, but Russia, why should Russia do it? It would be totally crazy and stupid, because it would lose in the end. If you control the loss, if you know that in the end, long-term based, you will lose under any circumstance, or you will get a third world war, how big are the losses then? And so that's a... And from my viewpoint, it's a given factor that there will be, or at least it's a very... it's a set factor or something which is logical to be expected, that there will be no gas pipeline in Syria. And maybe even that there will be no concrete new border state like Sunnistan, a border situation. And by that there will be no way to have a pipeline. And so I would expect that there will be a shift from in the Saudi foreign policy, helping the Qataris back to a brain according to the Muslim Brotherhood, and helping the Egyptian back to a brain according to the Muslim Brotherhood. And so they will meet somewhere, and so the Muslim Brotherhood will no longer be seen as terroristic. Hopefully it will be like that, even if it would support the biblical prophetic out view that there is no agreement. And so the civil war in Egypt, as I've described it, and there's also Russia's responsibility in that, and it's a very big temptation. And if Russia really wants to do the will of God, or act in the way God would act, as someone also where Russia could do peace and have an influence on that, it has a price. It has a real price, because especially in Egypt, a destable Egypt can also be in the interest of Russia, but it may then lose its possibility, and I've discussed it in other videos, to sell energy, because civil war will come earlier than the possibility to build something like an atomic energy plant. And so Russia will possibly be kicked out of Egypt's influence sphere, and the business deal thing will also be crushed like the Turkish thing. And that's the attempt of the Saudis and the Qataris with this plane, and also of the Turkish hardcore Sunnis, and maybe of Erdogan himself, and I guess of Erdogan himself, to whatever Erdogan has as the alternative. And so Erdogan says, well, I get the gas if we get Sunnistan or get Assad out of the way. And so as Russia has now hindered it, Egypt pipeline plans might be discussed. And Egypt might be the next field where these changing world order freaks are going after. And so this needs to be discussed. And if Russia is discussing it itself, it has the content lead and the information lead. And so it's very important to discuss it. And it's important to discuss it truth-based and also self-paining. That's still my strong conviction. Especially when you know that in the end, Russia needs to diversify its economy, and so there is a logical finish of the argument circle in that. What do you think about that? And do more and better content to this question if you watch this video. I am not someone like a geopolitical expert. I've traveled to Syria, and I've done work on content about Egypt, Syria, the Middle East for some years now, but I still have not the background to, and not the strategical abilities or the geopolitical knowledge, the deep Middle East background knowledge to really make a 100% assumption or forecast in that. But from my viewpoint, it's the time now to discuss it. And it's the time now for Russia to get to the deals, and the deals in Egypt. And that's why Russia didn't do it because I say it, but you come to the same results if you have to decide things in Russia, I guess, from my viewpoint. And so it's obvious. And in the end, peace in Syria is possible. It's possible if there is another pipeline way, if there is another pipeline enablement situation. If Qatar, and so where would then be the war? And so the war hawks on both and all sides are pulling the world into a third world war, and the gas hawks, if you like, possibly too. And the atomic energy hawks, and whomever the hawkish thing is, whatever the interest is, it needs not to be balanced, it needs to be solved in a different way. Because if you see the third world war as something which will come under any circumstance, and this is what is reality, when Obama is finished, the Russians will have war, and we will have war. Russia sooner or later, I guess not so soon, but anyway, and so Syria will possibly not be the first place where the war is then burning, hopefully, depending from my viewpoint on the development, and also depending on the development of the situation of Israel. If Israel is getting more into a corner and it's a small, from many sides, battled country then in a different way than it is now, the biblical prophecy will much likelier be the description of the situation than it has been now, and so the things then will turn against Damascus and Damascus as a city, and Assad by that will be finished and crushed. And so what I've discussed some years ago has been right, that Assad is not going to be crushed, and so he has stayed in power. Not because I said it, but also because of biblical prophecy and geopolitical things, and also of the Russians, because of the Russian help, and so on. So please do more and better content, and forgive my little bit tired and chaotic, cryptic, sentence shortening way of doing my content. And well, please also pray for my family and my personal situation, that I get some things clear and some spiritual things in a win position back, which is pretty important for me. And so, see you. Or not, or whatever.